Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe, if you dare.
After this, he bankrupted my parents and family, making them pay all his bills, expenses and rewarding them with prayers. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. Serious, former cult members or friends of cult members of Reddit, what is your creepiest, scariest or most disturbing story, and is that what made you leave?
Number 1.
I grew up on Guam. My goodness, it was hell. At the time I couldn't see it because I was so brainwashed, but the whole school community was a cult. They brainwashed and forced Christianity onto students constantly, and if you didn't convert you were segregated from the community. As a Christian school, I understand that you would want to influence students to your religion, but no way should students feel left out because they have their own set of beliefs. Other really odd things they made me believe was wearing too short of a skirt or shorts were sinful and ungodly because we are allowing Satan to control our body to manipulate the minds of our peers. They even made me believe that watching movies that were not rated PG are sinful and I should stay away from them. Pop culture and music was also not accepted and were banned ungodly. They went as far as saying students, mind you I was in kindergarten when this rule was enacted, can't bring items with characters such as Pokemon, Powerpuff Girls, and Harry Potter because they are depicted with superpowers that only God can have, thus it is unholy. The hardest thing to do was finally growing up and realizing how much BS was being fed to me and begging my parents to get me the hell out of there. After leaving I faced repercussions of old friends turning their backs on me and teachers looking down and shaming me. Overall it was a terrible situation, and I'm so glad I left that place to experience a better high school. Sad thing is most of my friends I grew up there that graduated from the school still hold the same outlook on life and are still very much involved in the school and community.
Number 2.
I worked for a cult. It was a private school for rich kids who had addictions. There was a dynamic leader who had an inner circle of young boys who he doted on. The school itself was somewhat abusive, untrained staff like myself administering meds, and, when I started, I was able to administer PR and Thorazine. As a staff member, I had to live like the students. Adhere to the same rules and regs. Then they worked to distance me from my family, telling me I had an addiction, I didn't, and that it was dangerous for me to use my time off to see my family. I walked away after a few weeks because I thought I was too weak to work there. Then I went back and realized what a terrible place it was. Finally left, with a brand new eating disorder I had managed to avoid during my own adolescence. The school shut down eventually due to lawsuits from parents. The former students have a FB page, and from what I can tell many struggle with the systematic abuse they experienced. The leader has since died, and turned out all his degrees and awards were faked. It taught me a lot about safety and services for vulnerable people. The scariest moment was the student who was actively psychotic and should have been in a lockdown facility but who was still with us. I was told to restrain him even though he wasn't fighting. He was on a hunger strike and refused to leave the building for a meeting. I had to carry him to the meeting, then restrain him the whole time.
Number 3.
My parents were members of an Islamic cult with a fake guru/holy man sort of thing. He used to lead group chants and things, and one time while everyone's eyes were closed chanting away in the semi-darkness. Me and him locked eyes and he realized that I was laughing at how dumb it was. He had a vendetta against me since then. He turned my parents against me first, convincing them that one day in the future, he could read the future. Apparently rolls eyes, I will break their hearts and leave and destroy the family. Because they were so invested in him, they started believing it and treating me, a 13-year-old, as if I had already committed the unspeakable act. After this he made my parents focus on my older brother more than me, lavishing him with expensive gifts such as Gucci watches, a brand new Mitsubishi Jeep with a private plate before he even passed his driving test, and experiences like executive box seats to major sports events up and down the country plus more. This wasn't enough. After this he convinced all of his followers that I was mentally handicapped, and needed to be kept isolated. For most of my teenage years I would come back from school/college/university to an empty house, many times not seeing another soul for weeks. The story of my parents' retarded child spread through the entire community where it is an accepted fact now, and I can't get married because everybody just assumes that I am mentally disabled. After this, he bankrupted my parents and family, making them pay all his bills/expenses and rewarding them with prayers. Through a too complicated to go into now chain of events, I was given the responsibility to become a full-time parent to my 2-year-old girl cousin, so he convinced everybody that I was a pedophile and molesting a baby, so I could not be left alone with her. He convinced my parents that I was their enemy, and his sons were their real sons, and to ignore me my entire life. To this day, I have never once been able to have a heart-to-heart talk with either of my parents. I have been working for 6 years now. They don't even know the name of my boss, or team, or even what I do. They are only interested in what day I get paid. There has been more done to me than this short amount, but I just replied because I want to say that I am a better man than anyone has ever understood, and I forgive my parents now that the bastard has finally been dragged to hell. I forgive them not because they deserve it, but because I believe that this experience made me stronger as a person. If all this could not break me through all those years, then what the F can break me now? The most disturbing thing about this cult was firstly that there are a million holy men like this all over the world. The second most disturbing thing is how easy it is for them to gather followers who believe that they are divinely powered individuals, through nothing more than cheap parlor tricks, vague prophecies and unprovable claims, like the time he had visited Jupiter via spirit travel. If anybody is reading this, who is going through something similar, all I will say is that your family is ill. If they were of a sound mind, they would not be doing these things. Be kind, be good, be better than them. Peace.
Number 4.
I don't know if it was a cult or not, but I grew up in a church group that was pretty close if not. My creepiest story is this. A big church that led, read controlled by fear, a lot of little churches ran a college, read unaccredited brainwashing, for all the little churches' kids so we didn't have to go to secular school which was pretty much considered the devil. The pastor of that big church was almost worshipped, everyone loved him and gave him free rein to tell them what to do with their lives. I went to this college because there was really no other acceptable choice when my family was in this group. Between my freshman and sophomore year there, this pastor was convicted of having sex with a teen girl he was counseling and of taking her across state lines, etc. He was later sentenced to 12 years in prison. The creepy factor is, I know for a fact that this man had keys to every door on campus and he was known to make surprise visits to the girls' dormitories. Meaning, this convicted predator had a key to my room and no one dared question him on anything. My family had been slowly on their way out for years, but this situation was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Number 5.
Very fundamental church. More extreme than most. I got my first clue at a women's gathering when we were passing out snacks and a grown woman said to me, "Oh no, my husband doesn't allow me to eat potato chips." Allow. Interesting. I got more and more clues as I was there. People were upset with me for reading liberal magazines, which was Reader's Digest. Then I was shunned for using worldly means for trying to lose some weight and using a diet drink mix. I was told I should be praying about it and more faith. The kicker was when the pastor's wife told me that she could tell every day where I was in my walk with Jesus spiritually, because of how much makeup I was wearing that day. Yup, time to go.
Number 6.
One day, the morning of going to said cult, my mother woke me up and tried to force dress me since I didn't feel like going. I had only gotten a few hours of sleep the night before, and I also felt slightly ill, like I had a cold, so I really wanted to stay home. After a few minutes of struggling to put ugly clothes on me, she gave up. And slapped me approximately 7 times, tried to choke me, then shoved me off the bed onto the floor. She screamed at me that I would be in trouble for this rebellion, and left for the cult meeting. That's when I finally decided I had enough, and decided to leave it permanently. I had already been thinking about leaving, but this was just the final nail in the coffin. Later on, she got me a therapist for the purposes of trying to make me go to their cult meetings, crying that there was something wrong with her daughter. Lucky me, the therapist sided against her and told her to stop forcing me to go. Thankfully, she never did it again, though she lamented about me not believing anymore. This was about 7 years ago, and I don't think I'll ever forget it. In a way, it was sort of a good thing. Because it opened my eyes to the world.
Number 7.
Yes, I've been part of a cult. I may as well tell you the story from the top. Cast your minds back to a time when you were 18, just out of A-levels, or just finishing them, and looking forward to dealing with life. Like many of my peers, I got it into my head that I wanted to go abroad and do development work. I found an organization via a newspaper advert, signed up at the recruitment weekend in Hull, and then straight after my last exam I jetted off to Denmark to train to do what I wanted to do for 6 months. The basic idea was that I would train in Denmark, then head out to Africa to do stuff like building toilets, educating people about AIDS, general well-meaning stuff. You get the idea. Well, the first mistake happened when I arrived, that is, because they forgot I was arriving. I sat in the bloody airport for 3 hours before thinking screw it and got a taxi to where I was staying, making sure I charged it to the company. Anyways, about a month in, we were all put to work to clean up the school where we went to train. Myself and a friend were working on the library, and I happened upon a book with a very interesting title, The History of North Korea. I read it, and had a laugh at what was essentially some very weak propaganda from our friends in Asia. And then I threw it out, thinking nothing of it. Another interesting occurrence was when the school decided to have a sing-along session. Fine and dandy, but we decided not to go because we had plans of our own, mainly involving lounging around and doing nothing. One of the teachers basically busted in, and ordered us out. She seemed most put out when I stayed where I was. I don't think she was equipped to deal with a narky English teenager who wasn't in a mood to put up with bullshit. The final straw came when I found a website called Vind Alert, have a look around, I think it's still out there, and noticed several odd things about this supposed charity I had signed up with. First of all, there had recently been a police raid at their headquarters. Secondly, there were allegations of money laundering, tax evasion, false accounting, brainwashing, and best of all, gun running. Not forgetting wage slavery and shoddy treatment of its workers. So, not liking what I was reading, I emailed the link to my dad, who was a journalist at the time. He emailed back saying it's real. Get out of there. Oh crap. Anyways, I started to email the creator of the website in order to formulate an escape plan. The only problem was, what was meant to be a private email was posted on the website, which was monitored by the lovely people I was working with. Here's where the story gets interesting. We were just about to go on an outward bound weekend, when I was pulled off the bus, regarding the email that had been sent. I was put in an office, on my own, with a large pissed off Danish man, oddly enough called Rene. He couldn't understand why I wasn't afraid of him. Could have been something to do with a lock knife which I had on my person should he try anything. So, after an hour or so of him trying to intimidate me, and me making a fool out of him, he tells me to leave the office. Here's the fun part. I got in contact with my mum over MSN, and she actually phoned up this guy and threatened him with coming over there herself with a press pack and making life very difficult if he didn't pay for a flight home and put me on the plane. Suffice it to say, I got the plane on the tacit understanding I wouldn't contact the media. Which I did the very next day. As a postscript to this, the leader of this cult is now on trial, the place where I was staying has closed, and the whole organization seems thoroughly tits up. And that's the story of how I managed to screw over a Danish cult. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time.